Hi everyone, my name is Sarah Alexander and I'm the Executive Director of MOFGA. Thank you for being here today. Such a beautiful Sunday. We're very excited that everybody's here at the fair. I know that the speaker may be a little bit loud if you're sitting right in the direction of the speaker. So if you need to move before the keynote, feel free to move right now. So MOFGA, the Maine Organic Farmers and Gardeners Association, we are the oldest and largest organic agriculture advocacy group in the country. We have 11,000 members and we started in 1971, so this is our 48th year. And this is the 43rd year of the fair. We have been going strong. This is one of our best years yet. Yep. Thanks to all the staff and volunteers. So this fair is really put on by about 2,500 volunteers who help with everything you see here. They make every single aspect of this fair happen, and so we're really appreciative of all that the volunteers do throughout the year and then especially during this weekend of the fair. One of the things we also like to share is that the fair, on this beautiful sunny day, we have a 102 kilowatt solar array that's collecting all of this sunshine and turning it into electricity, and that actually powers the entire fair and all of the electricity that MOFGA needs for the whole year. So we are net zero. Yeah, very exciting. There's lots to learn here at the fair, so we hope that everybody will take the day and explore and learn some new things and go to some new workshops and eat some good food. And I have the pleasure now of introducing Devin, who's going to be our keynote speaker today. So an estimated 4.3 million service members have transitioned out of military service since 2003, representing a new generation of military veterans. Exiting military members leave their service having been trained in very specific skills, behaviors, and values that often do not translate well into civilian life or school life. So after 27 years on active duty as a U.S. Marine Corps officer, Devin transitioned to full-time farming in 2016 with the vision of replicating an agricultural environment that will honor and support those transitioning veterans that are part of this new generation. In establishing their own farm and business, Anne and her family have learned that many of the soft skills practiced in the military, such as leadership, persistence, and flexibility, are crucial to their success. Veterans benefit from a translation and application of these skills into a focused and disciplined industry, and agricultural work provides the perfect environment for veterans to establish their own regimen, experiment with innovation, and manage their own personal interactions. So Anne's going to share with us today how her military experiences are helping her family and her navigate farming as a lifestyle and business, and lay out their vision for developing a veteran-to-farmer transition program and how the community can help support its local veteran farmers. So please join me in welcoming Devin to the stage.
All right, good morning, everyone. Hoorah! Hoorah! All right, that's Marine speak for good morning. It's also Marine speak for how you doing? This sucks. This is great. This is not my cup of tea. Hey, I love this. So hoorah is definitely a phrase that you can use with any Marine that you see. There was often times when I'd be walking down the halls of the Pentagon in my Marine Corps uniform, and I'd be walking with other services, civilians, and I'd see a Marine coming down the other way. He or she would be in their uniform as well. We'd both say hoorah to each other, and everybody's like, do you know that person? No, but we're Marines, and so that's how we say. So let me hear you speak Marine. Hoorah! Hoorah! All right, I'm feeling great. This is my third year living in Maine. We got here in 2016. Third year attending the fair, and I'm finally starting to figure out where everything is. So I've gotten most of my Christmas shopping done. Herbals from Herbal Revolution. I've gotten some great mushroom spores from North Spore, and I even spent $200 on alpaca socks. Ooh, who doesn't want alpaca socks for a New England winter Christmas? So thank you to the Common Ground Fair organizers, and thank you for being here for me to tell my story. My goal for today is to tell you a few sea stories as a small representation of one veteran's experience and path into farming. And then I would like to leave you with some thoughts about how you can become part of supporting your local veteran farmer. People often ask how I ended up in Maine, and I was born in California, I was raised in Washington State, and aside from my dad being from Madawaska and there being some great farmland here, I recall a time when I was a young lieutenant back in the early 90s, and I heard a story about the Marine Commandant who at one point had decided that he was going to personally recruit pilots to come into the Marine Corps. And so he came upon these two young twins that happened to be from Maine, and the general asked the first young twin, he says, "Hey young man, what skills can you bring to the Marine Corps?" And the Mainer said, "I'm a pilot." And the general immediately said, "That's fantastic." He turned to his aide and he said, "Aide, go, get paperwork, get him to OCS, get him into pilot training. That's it, done, go, have him done." The aide scurries off, and the general looks at his brother and says, "You young man, what can you do?" And the other twin, having seen the success that his brother just had, said, "I chop wood." And the general goes, "Son," he goes, we don't need wood choppers in the Marine Corps. I'm here to look for pilots." He goes, "What can you do for the Marine Corps?" And the young man says, "I chop wood." Okay, young man, you're not listening to me. Clearly you're not made out for the Marine Corps. This is the 21st century. We don't need wood choppers. And he goes, "Well, you hired my brother." And the general says, "Well, of course we did. He's a pilot." And the young man rolls his eyes and he said, "So what? I have to chop the wood before he can pilot." Yeah, this is why Marines don't tell jokes. So many of you are familiar with the different military eras in which we've traveled through history. We have small wars, we've had big wars, wars that have been on our own soil, and wars where our sons and daughters have gone off to fight in far-off foreign lands. War is part of our past, our present, and unfortunately likely part of our future. About 1 in 5 veterans alive today served on active duty after the terrorist attacks of 9/11. Many of them may be here. I know I see several of them here in the front row. As you've heard several times, there are an estimated 4.3 million service members who have transitioned out of the military since 2003. And why is that 2003 year important? Because in 2001 is when the attacks occurred, and so we have this post 9/11 generation of new military veterans that are coming out and seeking their place in the world after they've served in the military. That group represents really a new generation that has, through its collective experiences from deployment to combat to transition back to civilian life, that are markedly different from those who have served in the previous eras. I was commissioned an officer in the United States Marine Corps after graduating from college in 1989. I was happy to earn a slot as an intelligence officer, in which I served for 27 years. And for those 27 years, I suffered, torn ligaments, broken bones. I traveled to 17 countries for work. I learned 2 additional languages, and I served in 3 combat zones. I suffered a failed marriage and managed to raise 2 sons through it all. I've thrived, and I've looked forward to serving in combat environments, which is very common with my peer military members. I shrugged off chauvinistic micro-inequities and was fortunate to work with some of the finest men and women that this country has produced. I served with the great trifecta, General Mattis, General Joe Dunford, and General John Kelly. I served with them in Iraq when we were with 1st Marine Division. You couldn't have asked for a finer trifecta of leaders to learn from and to serve with. And in doing so, I developed an immense sense of duty and obligation to my country and community. A lot of research shows that our personalities are really defined and started as young children. And I find that to be true because most military members who join, come in at the 18, 19, or 20-year-old age. And so there has to be something instilled within them to make them step up to the plate and say, "I do," and say yes to their country. And my time in the military, in addition to that very basic character building development that I had as a young child, is filled with some unique personal experiences. Every one of us that served in the military has them too. And they continue to frame the character and make me the person that I am today. So, sea story, like that time during the winter of 1997, when I was stationed in Seoul, South Korea, and I was serving as an East Asian Foreign Area Officer. My duties took me on a whirlwind tour and a visit to the Russian Far East with Army Captain David Shin. We had 2 weeks of travel planned that would take us along a fascinating path from Vladivostok through Haverosk to Blagoveshchensk and a side trip to Sakhalin Island via planes, trains, and automobiles, and really that's what the travel was. Captain Shin and I spoke Korean and English. We brought a translator with us from Korea that spoke Korean and Russian. Not very good Russian, as it turned out. If you recall, in 1997, hopefully many of you, I'm looking at it, we're alive then, the Soviet Union had collapsed just 6 years prior. Boris Yeltsin was president, and the Russian states were suffering from hyperinflation, and they were on the eve of a major financial crisis that occurred in 1998. Government workers went unpaid for months, and though I didn't witness the Soviet-era breadlines that are stereotypical of that period, you could see that times were really tough. Times were so tough for the military even that it was very common for young Russian soldiers to commandeer a military vehicle, and on their way to some particular military errand, they would pick up passengers. It's kind of like the early version of Uber. Maybe Uber, spent some time in Blagoveshchensk, Russia. And so it so happens that my group of three, me, Captain Shin, and our translator, were out. It was about 10 o'clock at night in Blagoveshchensk, Russia, and it was December, and it was minus 40 degrees, and I was not completely prepared for that. Well, we happened to take a ride from this young Russian soldier in his military commandeered vehicle, and decided we needed to get back to the place where we had been, our safe house essentially, where we were working with some North Korean defectors. And we also had to catch a train later that night. The train was leaving at midnight. Well, between the translator and the Russian Sergeant Dmitri, he decided that he no longer wanted to carry a couple of Americans in his vehicle. So he dumped us off in the middle of this city, in the middle of Siberia, in the middle of December. And we literally had no idea where we were. My intelligence skills at that particular time had no effect. Fortunately, Captain Shin was a Ranger qualified Army infantryman. And he took us, we stopped. I literally saw him sniff the air, kind of look around, and he says, "I know where I am." And he started running. And Mijong, the translator, and I ran right after him. What else were we going to do? And he actually, did know where he was, and he got us back to our safe house, and we were able to make the train without any further delay. There's also Das Vidanya to Russia at that time. There was also another time in 2004 where I was flying under cover of darkness from Kuwait into Iraq on a C-130 transit plane, and I was part of an advanced party that we were going to set up an analytical fusion center in Ramadi, Iraq. I was traveling with one of my lead analysts and a few other communications Marines. We had spent a week in Kuwait waiting for our transit to get us into country. And finally, the time came, and we were going to transition with the Army Intelligence Unit that was already there in Al Anbar province. The flight's only about an hour between Kuwait and Baghdad. And so we had been on the flight for about an hour, and as we were getting into Baghdad airspace, the plane banked a hard turn. I don't even remember which way we went, left or right, but we banked hard enough that everybody kind of spilled a little bit. And an hour later, we were back in Kuwait. So apparently what had happened is a surface-to-air missile had come the way of our plane, and fortunately, through good piloting skills, the pilots were able to avoid us getting hit and killed. Thankful for that, but we were back in Kuwait, but it was not before my lead analyst, who had his helmet in his lap, had emptied the entire contents of his stomach into his helmet. And that started a chain reaction. My military members are nodding their heads like crazy. Started the chain reaction of every other person that was sitting around the outside of that plane, barfing and emitting all kind of gaseous emissions. By that time, I had already had 2 kids, so I was pretty much immune to any vomit or poop variations. I was good to go. Too bad for those guys who had to wash their helmet and try to get that clean again before they put that up on top of their head. Shukran jazilan to that. So I have hundreds of stories. Frankly, and I was talking to Sarah about this earlier, I'm married to a Marine, and we don't tell our stories to each other because we kind of know them, and frankly, we kind of roll our eyes at each other because we think that each other is embellishing. My husband really does embellish his stories. He was a pilot, so he talks with his hands a lot. And then he's also a little bit older than me, so he was in when the Soviet Union was still around, so he always talks about how he was in a dogfight with with Soviet fighter pilots. My husband flew helicopters. There's no way that he was in a dogfight with Russian or Soviet Union fighters pilots. But he's not here to defend himself, so hopefully on YouTube he'll give me some grief about that. Well, frankly, and then I spent most of my career in front of a computer and giving briefings on PowerPoint. So there's, besides the few, funny little stories, I don't have a lot of war combat, fortunately, that I have to give. But despite our differences, we share one singular event that we also share with every other veteran who has worn the uniform before we became an all-volunteer force in 1973. We all said yes. We said yes to serving our country. We said yes to leaving our families. We said yes to missing birthdays, births, weddings, funerals, holidays. We said yes to putting ourselves in harm's way in foreign lands. And we said yes to each other. Yes, I got your back. Yes, I'll make sure this letter gets to your family if you don't make it. Yes, I'll escort your broken body back home and make sure that everyone knows that you died with honor. Yes, I'll remember you and keep telling your story. I remember Corporal Salem Bashar. He was a young, bright-eyed intelligence analyst from California, Chula Vista, California. He deployed with my unit to Al-Anbar, Iraq in 2006. This was his second deployment to Iraq, and he had only joined the Marine Corps in 2003. Corporal Bashar spoke English, Spanish, and Arabic. He could play several musical instruments. He was on the wrestling and track teams in high school. He studied physics. He was a very good amateur magician and was just a decent, smart young man with a full life ahead of him. He married his longtime sweetheart 12 days before we deployed and was killed by enemy action just 3 months later. I had the burden and the honor of serving as his casualty assistance officer, notifying his family of his untimely death, and being with them through their early days and weeks of heart-wrenching grief as they tried to process and they prepared for his funeral and his burial. I said yes to him. Yes, I'll let your mother insult me. I'll let your mother disparage the Marine Corps in her grief and yell and scream at everybody that she comes in contact that had anything to do with the uniform that puts you in harm's way. Yes, I will hold your father as he sobs the grief that is uncontainable. I will take that for you, Corporal Bashar, because you're a Marine and you died for us, but I will also honor you and make sure that your story is never forgotten. When I am old and gray, I will be old and you will be forever young. He was 20 years old. He said yes. So how do those of us who come home, either with injuries or uninjured, honor those who gave the ultimate sacrifice, and how do we find our next yes? The way that we can best honor our fallen brothers and sisters is to live our best lives possible. We live our lives fully and deliberately. They died defending the very freedoms that this country holds so dear. Despite the political environment, we still are the best country in the world. And these freedoms have been paid for in blood and sweat and tears, by those veterans that sit right next to you. It's our duty not to waste their sacrifice. For those of us who do come home, we often come home much different than when we left. Loss of limb, traumatic brain injuries, stress, anxiety, depression, uncontrollable rage, the list goes on. It's not pretty, it's heartbreaking, it's a shame, but it's life. I've had the great privilege of working with the University of Maine's Cooperative Extension AgrAbility program. AgrAbility provides no-fee resources to help people of any disability work through challenges that may limit their ability to be successful in their farming, gardening, fishing, or logging work. I've been working with AgrAbility part-time since last October as a veteran outreach coordinator, and in my short time I've met some really amazing, hard-charging, dedicated veterans who just want to farm. So to understand how agriculture fits for those and for many veterans around the country, you have to understand some of the traits and characteristics that are inoculated into us, like a nice shiitake mushroom spore on a freshly cut oak log. Like that imagery? So from boot camp or officer candidate school until the time you leave the service, your days and nights surround you with opportunities to either excel or fail. You cannot escape experiences that will hone several characteristics, like discipline. You might think that our military standards cover pretty much every aspect of your life, like your hair length, your body fat standards, your shaving standards, the length of your skirt for the women, 1 inch above or below the kneecap. That's it. You cannot do that. You might think that's a little onerous and irrelevant to fighting a war, but really, it's all just practice. It's practice for the attention to detail and the discipline that's going to be the difference between winning and losing on the battlefield. Every elite sports team knows this analogy. You have to work hard, you have to practice hard so that when you play the game, you're ready to go. And I can tell you now that there is no more important game to play than being on the battlefield and having the United States win that battle and that war. Am I right? All right. So another characteristic, independence. So contrary to common misperception, discipline does not make us a bunch of robots. The U.S. military prides itself on mission-type orders and commander's intent. And what this means is that I will give an order to somebody and they will follow it out to meet that result. I don't tell them how to build the clock, I just want to know what time it is. And it's up to, we train all of our military members to be able to think on their own and hopefully give them the right resources so that they can carry out and execute that mission successfully. There is a negative component to that, I will say. That independence can make a tendency to try and do everything on your own. So there's many times when, as a candidate, officer candidate school, sergeant instructor will ask me a question, and I don't know the answer. The answer is, this candidate does not know, but we'll find out. Well, who the heck am I going to go find that out? I'm with a bunch of other knuckleheads who don't know anything either, right? But you know, as you get older, that independence is great, but it can't be in lieu of seeking help and letting others help you. And I find that that's been the biggest challenge with our veteran community, is just saying, hey, maybe we can help you with this, because a lot of us will rather go to YouTube or the internet and do it on our own and look like we know what we're doing, when getting some help from somebody who knows what they're doing would have been a much better path. Your military members will be confident, self-assured, confident enough to embark upon a business when they have no business skills. They have no business doing business, but we're confident that we can make that happen. And oftentimes we do, but again, kind of back to that independence thing, there needs to be a little give and take there. Selflessness. I have several veterans that I work with on the business side who labor over charging what their product is worth. They would rather give their food away, give their product away, their blood, sweat, and tears, do all that work for free. And frankly, even in our own farm life with my husband and I, if you take a look at our tax records, there's sometimes when I've paid you to eat our food. So that is it's selfless, but again, there needs to be a balance with that. And then multitasking. How many here multitask on a daily basis? Right? It's a full farming thing, and you really hone that skill in the military. But as you, and I'm speaking to the choir because all the farmers here understand that taking on too much responsibility and taking on too many aspects of what your farm is going to do. When Tim and I first started farming in 2016, we're like, we're going to do bees, we're going to do maple syrup, we're going to grow organic vegetables, we're going to raise some pigs, and we're doing sheep. And we can do a few of those, but we can't do those all well. A little bit of time and experience needs to kind of help us get into that. Results oriented. If you think about it, typically our duty assignments are about 3 years. Every 3 years, a military member moves on to a different unit, different mission. And so while you're there for the first 6 months, you're just learning your job. And then you need to do that next 2.5 years, you feel compelled to have some results. So within 3 years, if you haven't been successful and made your unit a better place than when you got there, you failed. So many of your veterans will come out with that same mentality, and it really does tend to be on that 3-year cycle. We can look forward, to that 3 years and say, okay, I've got to have this accomplished. So what do these characteristics sound like? Sound like they'd be helpful in running a farm or running your own business. The Pew Research conducted some fascinating research earlier this year of military veterans, and overall found that combat experiences strengthened them personally, but it also made the transition back to civilian life really difficult. When asked about their experiences in the first few years after leaving the military, remember we're talking about 4.3 million military veterans having left, combat veterans are less likely than those who didn't serve to say that they felt optimistic about their future. Less likely to feel optimistic about your future when you have just served in one of the most dangerous and demanding occupations that we have as human beings. And they are most likely to say that they didn't get the respect they deserved, they struggled with a lack of structure in the civilian life, and they felt disconnected from family and friends. So those are some pretty hard statistics, and those are things that we can dig into. At the same time, those who served in combat report positive impacts from the experience. The majority says that their experience in combat made them feel closer to those with whom they served alongside, and they showed them that they were stronger than they thought they were and changed their priorities about what was important in their life. When my husband and I made the decision to move to Maine to start a career in farming after leaving the military, we relied on our years of adaptability, persistence, and flexibility training that we had learned and received throughout our years in the Marine Corps. But to be honest, we were naive to the reality of our experiences as actual farmers. Like I said, YouTube videos and Johnny's Growing Library will only get you so far. But bit by bit, we are stumbling through our way through aches and pains, heartbreak, marital discord, and strained finances. And having the courage to reach out and ask for help has honestly been one of our biggest struggles. We should be able to figure this out. That's what we do. We're trained killers. We should be able to figure out how to do farming. And we will. I'm not here to say that it's bleak. The future is very bright. But we have to take advantage of MAFCA and cooperative extension classes, the Maine Farmland Trust, the National Resources Conservation Services, and the Beginning Farmers Network Resource Network. Those are just a few organizations in this great state of Maine that are helping everyone farm better, and I would venture to say, in particular, veterans who will need to access and use those resources to make them successful. We found that working in agriculture has provided us the perfect environment to establish our own battle rhythm. We still have 2 young boys at home. Between Tim and I, we have 4 boys, but farming is allowing us to have a little bit of control over our timing. That sounds funny because farmers are always working 24/7, but it does allow us, because we are on our own business, and we can take that time to spend time on our family. We get to experiment with innovation. For every second lieutenant who has a great idea, there's always a Lance Corporal going, "That's not going to work, ma'am. That's not going to work." But you know what? I get to find that out for myself. I get to innovate. I've experimented. I'm selling kimchi now. My heritage is Korean, so I thought, why not make kimchi? And it's going great. I get to experiment. We have a new fire roasted salsa that we're experimenting with. We make garlic skate pesto. I get to have all these great ideas, and it either fails or succeeds with my effort and my family's effort and our farm's effort. We get to manage our own personal interactions. You notice that someone's missing from our Chase Stream farm. That'd be my lovely husband. Frankly, he doesn't like crowds. He doesn't like people a lot. I mean, he loves his friends and he loves his family, but it's really hard for him to get over that initial hump of getting out there and working with people that he doesn't know. I, on the other hand, I am a little bit of an extrovert, so I really enjoy it. I love doing the farmer's market. If you ever come to our farm stand and my husband is behind the register, just avoid the nasty look he's giving you on his face. He's really a very kind man, but he's just having such a hard time dealing with all the input and the sensory overload that he tends to look very grumpy. We often try that in the early days of our farm stand, and he would come in at our farm stand at a farmer's market. He would come in. I would just need to go to the bathroom. Like, babe, I need like 10 minutes so I can go use the bathroom. Okay. I had a crush of people. They were buying vegetables, buying kimchi, all that stuff. He's there. I come back, and he's completely alone. Like nobody is buying anything from him. I don't know what he does, so we don't do that anymore. But most importantly, for us, it's given us a purpose. And I think that is the common thread that a lot of military veterans lack when they leave the military, is just finding a purpose again. We had a purpose when we were serving our country. There was always someone senior to us telling us what to do, and we had a mission to accomplish. When you get out and you're on your own, it's really imperative that you find that purpose again so that you can continue to be successful both psychologically and financially, frankly. So as we've navigated our own choppy waters, pieces are starting to fall into place for the next phase of Chase Dream Farm. Our initial vision was really to have the organic farm be just the platform for a teaching farm. And we had envisioned having veterans, as they're transitioning out of the military, come live with us on the farm, and we would put them through a training and education curriculum so that they could continue on and either go work on farms themselves, own their own farm, or go into other type of agricultural business. The long pole in our tent, frankly, is having facilities for the veterans to live in. We have a home, but we really like to have some additional housing for them. But what's happened over the last 3 years, and it all falls into place. With my work with AgrAbility, the Veterans Administration Office has agreed to let us develop a curriculum there at the hospital in Togus, and they have a beautiful 48-bed community garden where we're going to start classes in November and teach veterans there at the hospital and those who come into the hospital as part of the recreation and therapeutic department to learn how to grow, and everything from soil health to developing a business plan and marketing skills and actually selling the vegetables that we grow there starting next spring. So I'm really excited about that. It's amazing to see how things are coming together. Even though they might be a little bit off from our original vision, we're still going to make it happen. Another program that's coming into the fall is a full-day symposium dedicated to veterans interested in agriculture. In my work with AgrAbility, and we're partnering with the United Farmer Veterans of Maine, we found that veterans who are struggling with post-traumatic stress, depression, anxiety, or brain injury have a couple of common challenges when running a farm business. For people who have experienced trauma, and this is common across the board, it can often be a challenge to plan for the future. If you've experienced a trauma, your day-to-day life is really the thing that's most in front of you. And it's really hard to look into the future and say that you actually see yourself 3 or 5 years down the road when you're not even sure you're going to survive today. So that trauma really affects how we work with veterans and how we just step by step, bit by bit, just kind of keep chugging along and making those resources available to them. At this symposium, we're going to have business mentors from SCORE and the Small Business Administration. They're going to be present for one-on-one sessions with each veteran and their partner so that they can talk about those business skills, a development plan, marketing, whatever it is in their business world that they're struggling with. We've got some business mentors that will work with them on that day, and then hopefully keep that relationship going, ad infinitum. We're also going to be, MOFGA has graciously volunteered to provide a financial planning workshop that will incorporate deliberate planning around disability payments. And in the afternoon, it's going to consist of a whole host of assistive technology, training, and applications that can address both mental and physical fatigue that a lot of our veterans struggle with. There's also going to be some yoga, basic training, And I'm actually really looking forward to that. I think it's going to be a good way just to have veterans who might not want to wear Lycra, but they'll do some stretching to make sure that they're healthy while they're continuing to farm. We're going to have a veteran-specific resource fair, a locally sourced lunch, lots of door prizes and gift bags. It's not a panacea, but it's a start. Right? It's a start. It's a start to acknowledge that, hey, there's a group out here that might just need a little kick in the butt to have somebody drag them over there. And once you get there, start making those next steps to being successful and finding your next yes. So what can you do? What can you do? You can befriend a vet, mentor a vet, hire a vet, buy from a vet. If you own a farm, consider hiring a vet. Consider giving back to that person who said yes for you and letting them learn from you as an apprentice, as a farm worker. Give them that experience, because you're going to find a really hardworking, dedicated soldier, airman, Marine, sailor behind that. Business mentors. If you have a business and you rock it on developing business plans, reach out. Please come talk to me, and we'll get you set up with somebody. If you're willing to volunteer your time to help some of these veterans, we've got veterans that are doing amazing businesses all around the state, and with large success. But as we all know, we can always be much more successful. The United Farmer Veterans of Maine is a great organization led by Chris Phillips and his wife Darla, and Bob Souza, and they're a great place for not only that social networking piece of it, but also acting as a resource for veterans who just need that to talk to somebody who speaks their language. We say roger that, we speak in military time, we can be a little crude, a little rude, but it's all in great love and fun. We make fun of each of the other services, but it's all a good thing. And when you have an organization like that can draw other veterans in there and just give them a safe space to be who they are, and that's a great thing to do. And through that organization, I know of at least 210 veterans throughout the state of Maine who have interested in farming, have started their own farming business. For example, we got a Navy veteran, Dawn and Marsha Lyons at Sea Lion Farm. They're in Alna. If you live anywhere near Alna, they've got amazing vegetables. They also have about, I don't know how many thousands of lavender plants in there, but they're doing a rockin' lavender business. As I mentioned, Army veterans Darla and Chris Phillips, they're at Serenity Farms right here in Troy. They do lavender, they're growing hemp, and they're distilling it down for CBDs. Darla tells me she hasn't taken some of her narcotic medicines since she's been taking the CBDs that they're growing and creating for her extreme pains and fatigue that she suffers from. So that's all good stuff. Navy veteran Clayton Spinney, he's in Kikionga Farm in Jefferson. He raises Mangalitsa pigs, which is an heirloom, amazingly fat marbled pork. He does sheep, and he just put up his first NRCS grant high tunnel and is growing vegetables in there. I've got Holly Pickens, Army nurse, and her partner Shelley Hart. They live in Whiting, Maine. They started a Mexican food truck using the Mangalitsa pork and rabbits that they grow on their farm and the vegetables. We've got retired Master Sergeant Mark Braun and his wife Tammy down in Steep Falls, Maine, and they're running a lavender farm and doing an amazing business with the farm state program there. So there's veterans all around you. I just ask that you reach out to them. Again, befriend a vet, mentor a vet, hire a vet, and buy from a vet. And the director of MOFCA, Sarah Alexander, has challenged us to buy local and buy organic, and I certainly would never tell you to buy over a vet versus any of the other amazing farmers that are in this state. But a little bit to a vet, a little bit to another farm, that's always a great way to support your local farmers. So in closing, I just remind you that we're trying to help veterans find a way to their next yes. And if you say yes to a vet, they've already said yes for your freedoms. So let's keep moving on. Rock.
Thank you so much, Anne, for your leadership and all that you're doing for the veteran community and all of our communities here in Maine. We appreciate appreciate you, and we're so thankful that you're here today. And I would like to invite folks who are interested in chatting with Anne a little bit more. You're welcome to come up here to the stage. And we thank you for being here today and hope you have a great rest of your day at the fair.